The year was 2147, and Earth had changed forever. The day humanity made first contact with the Galactic Empire started like any other day on Mars Colony 6. The red dust storms swirled outside the dome windows as workers went about their daily tasks. But everything changed when the massive Imperial ships appeared in orbit, their sleek hulls gleaming in the pale Martian sunlight. After months of careful diplomacy, humans and the Empire had established peaceful relations. Trade routes were being discussed, cultural exchanges planned, and humanity felt ready to join the galactic community. The Park family, researchers at the Mars Science Institute, were among the first civilians cleared for travel to an Imperial space station for a cultural exchange program. Jae-yun Park, just 8 years old, pressed her face against the transport ship's window, her eyes wide with wonder as she watched Mars shrink behind them. Her parents, Dr. Park and Dr. Kim, checked their equipment one last time. They were leading a team studying alien biology, hoping to advance human medicine with Imperial knowledge. The transport ship, Morning Star, carried 20 passengers, mostly scientists and diplomats. As they passed the orbit of Phobos, Jae-yun sketched the alien ships in her notebook. She wanted to be the first human to design ships that could travel between galaxies. That's when High Captain Daxon's patrol ship, the Imperial Justice, appeared from behind Phobos. The massive warship dwarfed the civilian transport. Without warning or provocation, Daxon gave the order that would change everything. Unregistered vessel in restricted space. Eliminate the threat. The Morning Star's captain tried to transmit their clearance codes, but Daxon didn't wait. The Imperial ship's weapons, designed for capital ship combat, struck the transport's hull. The blast tore through the civilian vessel's shields like paper. Jae-yun's last moments were spent still holding her sketchbook, her final drawing unfinished as the hull breach sucked the air from the passenger compartment. Her parents died trying to reach her, their magnetic boots locked to the floor as they stretched out their arms toward their daughter. When rescue ships arrived, they found no survivors. Among the wreckage, they recovered Jae-yun's notebook, its pages filled with colorful drawings of stars, ships, and her dreams of the future. The notebook would later become a symbol of humanity's loss of innocence. The Empire's response came 3 days later. The Supreme Council, ruling from their capital world 50,000 light-years from Earth, sent a brief message. The incident has been reviewed. Captain Daxon acted within acceptable parameters given the security risks in the Mars sector. A compensation of 500 Imperial credits will be provided for each life lost. The matter is considered resolved. 500 credits. The Empire valued Jae-yun's life at less than the cost of a standard Imperial food replicator. The human diplomats tried to explain the significance of killing a child. They described Earth's values, the special place children held in human society. The Empire's representatives seemed puzzled by the reaction. Your species places unusual importance on immature specimens, the Imperial High Chancellor noted. This is noted for future reference. The compensation offer stands. What the Empire didn't understand was how deeply this would cut into humanity's soul. As news of Jae-yun's death spread across Earth and its colonies, something changed. Parents looked at their children and saw Jae-yun. Every child's drawing became a reminder of her unfinished sketch. Every empty classroom seat seemed to echo with her absence. Military leaders who had been wary of the Empire's power began reviewing their secret weapons programs with new urgency. Scientists who had held back their more dangerous discoveries now worked through the night, perfecting technologies they had deemed too risky to use. Politicians who had argued for years now stood united in silence as they watched Jae-yun's father's public address. My daughter believed in a future where humans and aliens could be friends, he said, his voice steady despite his tears. The Empire has shown us that such a future was a child's dream. They have awakened us from that dream. Now they will learn what it means to harm a human child. The Empire's diplomats noticed a change in their human counterparts. The eager smiles were gone, replaced by cold, professional courtesy. Questions about Imperial technology became more focused, more specific. The humans seemed especially interested in Imperial shield frequencies and weapon systems. In their arrogance, the Empire dismissed these changes. They had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. What could one primitive species do to threaten them? They would soon learn that they had not just killed a child. They had killed humanity's innocence, their hope for a peaceful integration into galactic society. And in its place, they had planted something far more dangerous, a cold, calculating rage that would reshape the galaxy. As the sun set on Mars that evening, Jai Yun's notebook was placed in a memorial case in the Mars Colony 6 Museum. Next to it, Earth's leaders signed the authorization for special military action, the first step in what would become humanity's ruthless campaign for justice. The Empire had made a fatal mistake. They thought they were dealing with just another primitive species. Instead, they had awakened humanity's darkest nature. And soon, the galaxy would tremble. The emergency sirens blared across every city on Earth, just hours after Jai Yun Park's death. For the first time in human history, every nation answered the same call. In underground bunkers and secret facilities, humanity's true power awakened. Military Commander Sun Mi Kim stood before the United Earth Council, her uniform crisp despite being awake for 36 straight hours. The chamber was packed with world leaders, all thoughts of old rivalries forgotten in the face of imperial arrogance. For the past 20 years, she began, we've been lying to the stars. Her words echoed through the silent chamber. While we showed the galaxy our civilian ships and basic space stations, we built something else. Something hidden. The massive screen behind her lit up, revealing vast underground shipyards stretching for miles beneath the Pacific Ocean. Sleek warships, unlike anything the public had ever seen, waited in perfect rows. Their hulls were made of materials that absorbed light rather than reflecting it. Project Shadow Shield, Sun Mi continued, began when our first deep space telescopes detected Imperial ships at the edge of our system. We knew we weren't alone, and we knew we had to be ready. The images change, showing quantum weapon tests that turned asteroids into dust. Dark matter drives that bent space itself. AI battle systems that could outthink any known computer in the galaxy. All of it hidden from Imperial scans by technology that made them appear primitive to outside observers. Admiral Taeyong Lee stepped forward next. His weathered face showed the weight of what was to come. The Empire thinks they know what humans are capable of. They've seen our public face, curious, peaceful, eager to learn. Now they'll see what we've been preparing for. The newly formed Earth Defense Force began mobilizing within minutes of the Council's unanimous vote. Hidden bases on the Moon, Mars, and deep in the asteroid belt sparked to life. Ships that had never seen the light of day emerged from their underground berths. The first reveal of humanity's true power came when Admiral Lee activated the quantum communication network. Imperial surveillance ships watching Earth suddenly lost all contact with their homeworld. Humanity's quantum scramblers, hidden in plain sight as communication satellites, created a barrier no Imperial signal could penetrate. In orbital shipyards disguised as space debris, the first wave of Earth's war fleet took shape. The ships were unlike anything the Empire had seen. No wasted space for luxury quarters or diplomatic rooms. These were pure warships, built by a species that had spent its entire history perfecting the art of war. Commander Sun Mi Kim's quantum weaponry changed everything the Empire thought they knew about physics. While they had mastered faster-than-light travel, humans had learned to harness the fundamental forces of reality itself. Each ship carried weapons that could tear apart the fabric of space-time. The dark matter drives, developed in secret beneath the lunar surface, gave human ships maneuverability that seemed to defy natural law. They could stop instantly, change direction without turning, and generate gravitational fields strong enough to crush Imperial ships. But perhaps most terrifying to the Empire would be the AI battle systems. While Imperial ships relied on predictable, programmed responses, human AIs could think creatively, adapt instantly, and control entire fleets with perfect coordination. They had been trained on millions of combat simulations, learning from every human war ever fought. As the Earth Defense Force assembled, Admiral Lee addressed the fleet. His words were broadcast to every ship, every base, every soldier preparing for humanity's first interstellar war. "The Empire believes they understand us," he said, his voice steady and cold. "They think they know our capabilities, our resolve, our limits. They killed a child and expected us to accept their credits as compensation. Today, we show them how wrong they were." The fleet began moving into position. Stealth ships took up stations near Imperial trade routes. Quantum weapon platforms activated in asteroid fields. AI networks started mapping every Imperial movement within 1,000 light-years of Earth. In the council chamber, Commander Sun-Mei Kim watched the deployment screens with grim satisfaction. "The Empire has ruled through fear for 10,000 years, she told the assembled leaders. But they never faced an enemy who had spent its entire existence preparing for this moment. They never faced humans. As the sun set on humanity's last day of peace, the Earth Defense Force stood ready. In orbital stations, ship hangars, and hidden bases, soldiers looked at pictures of Jae-yun Park. Her dream of friendship between species had died with her, replaced by humanity's iron resolve. The Empire had killed a child. Now they would learn why humans had always been the monsters in their own stories. The Imperial border station hung silently in space, its scanners sweeping the darkness between stars. The board crew watched their monitors, following the same routine they had for centuries. Their scanners showed nothing unusual, just empty space and the occasional merchant vessel. Then Earth struck. Admiral Lee's stealth fleet appeared from nowhere, their ships seeming to materialize like ghosts inside the Empire's defensive line. The experimental ghost ship technology, perfected in secret beneath Earth's oceans, made human vessels completely invisible until the moment they chose to reveal themselves. Captain Minji Kang led the first wave, her flagship Silent Thunder appearing less than a kilometer from the Imperial command station. The Empire's defenders had no time to react. Quantum phase torpedoes, weapons that existed partially outside normal spacetime, passed through the Empire's impenetrable shields as if they weren't there. The Imperial station's crew watched in horror as their shields, technology that had protected them for 10,000 years, failed to stop the human weapons. The quantum torpedoes struck with surgical precision, targeting power cores and weapon systems. Within minutes, the border station went dark. Admiral Lee's voice crackled across Imperial frequencies. "This is humanity's response to the murder of Jae-yun Park. You valued her life at 500 credits. Now we'll show you the true cost." The Empire's 7th Fleet, pride of their border forces, rushed to respond. 100 ships, each capable of destroying a planet, moved to engage the human vessels. Their commanders were confident. After all, they had numbers, technology, and 10 millennia of military supremacy on their side. They were wrong. Captain Kang's ghost ships danced between Imperial formations. The dark matter drives let them move in ways that defied Imperial tactics. While Empire ships needed time and space to turn, human vessels simply shifted sideways, their drives bending space around them. The Empire's fleet fired their main weapons, filling space with enough energy to shatter moons. But their targeting systems, designed to track normal ships, couldn't lock onto the quantum-shifted human vessels. Most of their shots passed harmlessly through empty space where human ships had been microseconds before. The humans' return fire was devastating. Quantum torpedoes bypassed shields, AI targeting systems found weak points instantly, and dark matter weapons created gravitational shears that tore Imperial ships apart. The proud 7th Fleet, undefeated for 1,000 years, began to die. In the command center of the Silent Thunder, Captain Kang watched the battle through quantum sensors. Her crew worked with cold efficiency, their months of training showing in every perfect shot, every precisely timed maneuver. The AI battle systems coordinated the entire human fleet like a single organism, each ship moving in perfect harmony with the others. The Imperial Admiral, watching his fleet die, finally understood. These weren't the primitive humans they had observed. This was something else, a species that had hidden its true nature, preparing for war while pretending to be peaceful. A species that had studied Imperial technology for weaknesses while displaying only crude ships and basic weapons. Fear, an emotion foreign to the Empire's military, began to spread through their ranks. Their shields didn't work. Their weapons couldn't hit the human ships. Their tactics, unchanged for centuries, were useless against an enemy that could appear anywhere and move in impossible ways. Within 2 hours, the battle was over. The Empire's 7th Fleet was reduced to drifting debris. The border defense network, their first line of protection against external threats, had been shattered. And humanity's fleet, barely scratched, moved deeper into Imperial space. Captain Kang sent one final message to the surviving Imperial ships. This was for Jai Yun, the child whose life you thought was worth so little. Remember her name, because there will be more. We're not stopping until the Empire understands what it means to harm a human child. As the human fleet vanished back into quantum space, they left behind a changed empire. For the first time in 10,000 years, the masters of the galaxy felt something they had inflicted on countless others: terror. In his command center, Admiral Lee prepared for the next phase. The Empire had thought they were dealing with primitives. Instead, they had awakened humanity's full technological might, hidden for decades behind a mask of peaceful curiosity. And this was only the beginning. The Imperial supply ship never saw what hit it. One moment it was cruising through what should have been safe space. The next it was drifting powerless, its engines dead and communications silenced. This was how Colonel Hyunwoo Park's Shadow War began. The Empire had built its power on controlling vast territories, spreading its forces across thousands of star systems. Now that very size became its greatest weakness. Human stealth ships struck everywhere at once, appearing from quantum space to destroy supply lines before vanishing again. Commander Jai-Ho Choi led the attacks on fuel shipments. His ship, Silent Strike, used Dr. Hejun Kwan's advanced AI to predict Imperial patrol patterns. The AI could process centuries of Imperial shipping data in seconds, finding patterns the Empire didn't even know existed. This let human ships strike when and where the Empire least expected. Commander Su Min-yang specialized in taking down Imperial communication relays. Her team's quantum viruses, designed by Dr. Kwan, infected Imperial networks and turned their own systems against them. Security protocols that had protected Imperial data for millennia crumbled before human cyber warfare. The Empire's response was predictable. They sent massive fleets to protect their supply lines, but they couldn't be everywhere at once. While Imperial warships guarded one route, human ships would strike 3 others. The Empire's vast territory worked against them, forcing them to spread their forces thin. Dr. Hejun Kwan's AI systems proved to be the Empire's nightmare. They learned and adapted with every encounter, finding new weaknesses in Imperial defenses. What worked against human ships once never worked again. The AIs shared information instantly across quantum networks, making every human ship as experienced as all of them combined. Colonel Park's strategy was simple but devastating. His forces never engaged in direct battles. Instead, they struck at infrastructure, fuel depots, repair stations, supply ships. The Empire's mighty warships became useless without fuel and supplies. Their crews started to fear deep space assignments, knowing human ships could appear anywhere. One of the most successful raids targeted the Empire's largest fuel processing station. Commander Choi's ships appeared inside the station's defensive perimeter, their quantum signatures masked as routine maintenance vessels. By the time the Imperial defenders realized what was happening, the humans had already planted their charges. The explosion was visible from 3 star systems away. The Empire lost enough fuel to power their fleet for a year, but more importantly, they lost their sense of security. Even their most heavily defended installations weren't safe from human infiltration. Commander Yang's cyber attacks proved equally devastating. Her quantum viruses didn't just shut down Imperial systems, they made them unreliable. Navigation computers would suddenly report false coordinates. Defense systems would identify friendly ships as hostile. The Empire's own technology became their enemy. The psychological impact was even greater than the physical damage. Imperial crews began to doubt their equipment, their defenses, even their own sensors. Every shadow might hide a human ship. Every system malfunction could be the start of another attack. Dr. Kwan's AIs learned to mimic Imperial communication patterns perfectly. They would send false orders, redirect ships, and create confusion throughout the Empire's command structure. Some Imperial captains began refusing to follow orders without direct visual confirmation, slowing their response times to actual threats. The Empire had never faced this kind of warfare before. Their military doctrine was based on overwhelming force and direct confrontation. They didn't know how to fight an enemy that refused to stand and fight, that struck from shadows and vanished before they could respond. Colonel Park's forces never lost sight of their mission's purpose. Every ship carried a picture of Jai-Yun Park in their command center. Every successful strike was logged with the same message. For Jai-Yun, the Empire had killed a child thinking there would be no consequences. Instead, they had started a war they didn't know how to fight. As the Shadow War continued, Imperial worlds began to suffer. Without reliable supply lines, some colonies faced shortages. The Empire's economy, built on the assumption of safe trade routes, began to falter. Systems on the Outer Rim, seeing the Empire's inability to protect them, started to question their loyalty. The Empire's vast territory, once its greatest strength, had become a cage too large to defend. They couldn't protect everything, and they never knew where the humans would strike next. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Empire felt what it was like to be truly vulnerable. And in his command center, Colonel Park planned the next phase of the Shadow War, knowing that every successful strike brought humanity closer to justice for one small girl who had dreamed of the stars. The Empire's greatest defeat began with a whisper. General Yun He Shin's fleet appeared simultaneously over 7 key Imperial worlds, using Dr. Ian G. Choi's revolutionary dark-light drives. The new technology let human ships ignore the normal rules of space travel, striking anywhere in the galaxy instantly. On the Imperial capital world of Centrum, panic spread through the High Council chambers. The supposedly invincible home fleet found itself facing human warships that simply appeared inside their defensive formations. Dr. Choi's dark-light drives let Earth's ships jump between positions faster than Imperial targeting systems could track. The assault started with precision strikes on military installations. General Shin had studied Imperial architecture for months, identifying weak points in their standardized designs. Every Imperial base followed the same patterns, making them predictable targets. Human quantum weapons struck power cores, shield generators, and command centers with surgical accuracy. Word spread quickly through the Empire's territories. Worlds that had suffered under Imperial rule for centuries saw their oppressors' defenses crumble before human attacks. The first to declare independence was Nevaria, a mining world whose resources had been stripped for generations. Their announcement triggered a cascade of similar declarations across the galaxy. The Empire's response proved catastrophic. Their attempt to suppress the rebellions only showed how vulnerable they had become. When Imperial warships arrived to punish Nevaria, they found human vessels waiting. General Shin's forces had anticipated the Empire's rigid military doctrine, setting traps that used the Empire's own predictability against them. Dr. Choi's dark-light technology changed the fundamental nature of space warfare. Imperial defensive formations, unchanged for millennia, became useless against ships that could appear anywhere at will. Human vessels would materialize inside Imperial shields, fire their weapons, and vanish before the Empire could respond. The standardization that had made the Empire efficient now spelled its doom. Every defense system, every military base, every warship followed the same designs. Once humans found a weakness in one, they could exploit it everywhere. The Empire's inability to adapt or innovate after 10,000 years of dominance became their greatest vulnerability. On the front lines, General Shin's forces demonstrated humanity's trademark adaptability. Each engagement brought new tactics, new applications of their superior technology. Imperial commanders, trained to follow rigid protocols, found themselves facing an enemy that rewrote their strategy with every battle. The pivotal moment came when 3 core Imperial worlds surrendered without a fight. Their planetary governors had seen the pattern. Resistance against human forces led to precise, overwhelming defeat, while cooperation meant protection from Imperial reprisals. More worlds soon followed, seeing Earth's victory as inevitable. General Shin's command ship, Dawn's Justice, became a symbol of humanity's technological superiority. Its dark light drive let it respond to threats anywhere in the galaxy within minutes. Imperial citizens began to whisper that humans possessed powers beyond normal science, their ships appearing like ghosts to strike at will. Dr. Choi continued to refine her dark light technology throughout the campaign. Each improvement made human ships more effective, while Imperial forces remained static, bound by tradition and bureaucracy. The technological gap widened with every engagement. The Empire's military advantage, built over 10 millennia, crumbled in months. Their standardized defenses, once considered perfect, proved fatally inflexible against human innovation. Each defeat exposed more weaknesses in their systems, encouraging more worlds to declare independence. In their desperation, the Empire abandoned their usual tactics and attempted to adopt human methods. But their crews, trained for rigid formations and standard procedures, couldn't match the adaptability of Earth's forces. Their attempts to improvise led to confusion and friendly fire incidents. As the Empire's grip weakened, General Shin ensured that every human victory served 2 purposes. First, it brought humanity closer to justice for Jiadun Park. Second, it showed the galaxy a new way, one where technological superiority came from innovation and adaptation, not standardization and tradition. The empire that had stood for 10,000 years was falling, not to brute force, but to human ingenuity and adaptability. Each world that declared independence weakened their grip further, and each failed counterattack proved their time had passed. And through it all, the image of a young girl who dreamed of peaceful contact with the stars drove humanity forward. The Empire had killed Jiayun Park, thinking themselves untouchable. Instead, they had triggered their own downfall at the hands of a species they had fatally underestimated. The Empire's final downfall began with silence. Chief Engineer Dong Hyuk Kang's FTL disruptor activated for the first time in the Centauri sector, creating an invisible wall that no faster-than-light travel could penetrate. Imperial ships, trying to jump through the affected space, found themselves trapped in normal space, their FTL drives completely useless. The panic spread quickly through Imperial command. For 10,000 years, they had relied on faster-than-light travel to maintain control over their vast territory. Now, human ships could create zones where this vital technology simply stopped working. Entire Imperial fleets found themselves stranded, cut off from support and supplies. Admiral Taeyong Li's strategy was brilliant in its simplicity. The FTL disruptors isolated key Imperial sectors one by one. Cut off from reinforcements, each sector's defenses could be systematically dismantled by Earth's forces. The Empire's vast size, once its greatest strength, became a critical weakness. Dong Hyuk Kang had developed the disruptor technology in secret, testing it in remote areas of space where Imperial ships rarely ventured. The device worked by creating a field that made faster-than-light travel mathematically impossible within its range. Imperial scientists, reviewing the data from affected sectors, found themselves facing principles of physics they had never imagined. The psychological impact was devastating. Imperial worlds, accustomed to rapid response from the central government, found themselves truly alone for the first time. Many planetary governors, seeing no hope of rescue, chose to surrender rather than face Earth's forces without support. Admiral Lee's fleet moved methodically through Empire space, setting up disruptor fields and then systematically neutralizing trapped Imperial forces. Human ships, equipped with Kang's special shielding, could still use their FTL drives, giving them complete tactical superiority. The Empire's attempts to counter the disruptor technology proved futile. Their scientists, bound by millennia of rigid thinking, couldn't comprehend the principles behind it. Every attempt to breach the disruption fields failed, often with catastrophic results for the ships involved. As news of the disruptor spread, rebellion erupted across Imperial space. Worlds that had chafed under Empire control for centuries saw their opportunity for freedom. The Empire couldn't send troops to suppress these uprisings. Their ships could no longer reach the rebellious systems. Kang's creation didn't just trap ships, it shattered the Empire's entire power structure. Communications requiring FTL transmission were blocked. Supply lines requiring faster-than-light travel were cut. The Empire's carefully maintained web of control began to unravel, system by system. Admiral Lee used this chaos to push toward the Imperial capital. His forces created a series of overlapping disruption fields, forcing Imperial ships to retreat or be trapped. The Empire's mighty fleets, unable to concentrate their forces, could only watch as human ships advanced steadily toward their homeworld. The Empire's response grew increasingly desperate. Ships attempting to force their way through disruption fields were torn apart by the conflicting physics. Others, trapped between fields, ran out of fuel and supplies. The proud Imperial Navy, undefeated for 10 millennia, was being defeated not by weapons, but by human scientific innovation. Dong Hyuk Kang continued refining his technology throughout the campaign. Each new version of the disruptor covered larger areas, used less power, and proved more difficult for Imperial forces to detect before activation. The Empire found itself fighting an enemy they couldn't reach, couldn't understand, and couldn't defeat. In their desperation, Imperial commanders began ordering suicide runs against the disruption fields. The results were catastrophic. Ships attempting to breach the fields at maximum speed were torn apart by fundamental forces they didn't understand. Each failed attempt further demoralized Imperial forces. The rebellion spread faster than anyone expected. Systems that had been loyal to the Empire for thousands of years declared independence, knowing the Empire could no longer reach them. Earth's forces were welcomed as liberators on many worlds, their superior technology seen as proof that the Empire's time had passed. Finally, Admiral Lee's forces established a disruption field around the Imperial capital system itself. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Empire's heart was cut off from its territories. The final phase of the war for Jai-Yun Park's justice was about to begin. In his lab aboard the flagship, Dong Hyuk Kang looked at the picture of Jai-Yun that hung on his wall. The Empire had killed her thinking there would be no consequences. Instead, their act had spurred humanity to create technologies that would reshape the galaxy. The Empire's time was ending, and a new era was about to begin. The Imperial surrender ceremony took place in orbit around Mars, exactly where Jai-Yun Park had died. The Empire's Supreme Chancellor knelt before Earth's representatives, a gesture unthinkable just months before. The surrender document was simple but absolute. The Empire ceased to exist. The first act of the new era was establishing the Jai-Yun Protocols. These laws, now binding throughout known space, made the harming of any civilian, especially children, the highest crime possible. The protocols weren't just rules. They were a promise to every species that humanity would protect the innocent. A massive memorial station was built at the exact coordinates where the Morning Star had been destroyed. Its central chamber held Jai-Yun's preserved sketchbook, her final unfinished drawing protected behind quantum-locked glass. The station became a pilgrimage site for beings from across the galaxy, a reminder of how one child's death had changed everything. The Earth Defense Force transformed into something new, the Galactic Peacekeeping Authority. Their ships, once instruments of vengeance, now patrolled trade routes and protected civilian vessels. The advanced technology that had won the war became tools for maintaining peace. Human diplomatic teams visited every former imperial world, helping establish new governments and integrating them into the galactic community. The former empire's rigid hierarchy was replaced by a system of mutual cooperation and respect. Worlds that had been enemies for millennia found themselves working together under human guidance. The changes weren't just political. Human technology revolutionized life throughout the galaxy. Dr. Choi's dark light drives made travel between worlds faster and safer. Chief Engineer Kang's breakthroughs in physics led to new power sources and defense systems. The AI systems designed for war were repurposed to solve problems of poverty and resource distribution. In schools across the galaxy, children of all species learned about Jai-Yun Park. Her story became a lesson about consequences, about standing up to tyranny, and about how the death of one innocent could transform an entire civilization. Her dream of friendship between species, though fulfilled differently than she had imagined, had finally come true. The former imperial capital became the headquarters of the new Galactic Council. In its main hall, a hologram of Jai-Yun played on endless loop, showing her drawing, laughing, dreaming of the stars. Below it, a simple plaque read, "She wanted to build ships to bring people together." Her death united the galaxy. The human leaders who had guided the war effort found new purpose in peace. Admiral Lee became the first commander of the Peacekeeping Authority. Commander Sun Mei Kim led efforts to share human military knowledge responsibly. Dr. Yunji Choi headed a new institute dedicated to sharing technology across species. But perhaps the most profound change was in how the galaxy viewed humanity. The species that had seemed primitive and peaceful had revealed itself to be sophisticated and formidable. Every race now understood that humans would go to any length to protect their children, and by extension, all children. The Jai-Yun Memorial Station grew over time, adding museums and research centers. Scientists studied there, seeking to understand what made humans different, how a species could be both so peaceful and so terrifyingly effective in war. The answer, they found, lay in humanity's capacity for both love and righteous anger. 50 years after the war, during a remembrance ceremony at the memorial, Jai-Yun's father spoke for the last time publicly. His words echoed through the galaxy. "My daughter dreamed of a future where all species could be friends. The Empire killed her for daring to reach for that dream. But in doing so, they'd made her dream come true, not through peaceful first contact, but through the unity that came after conflict. The galaxy is now what she imagined, even if she never got to see it." The lesson was clear to all. Humanity would protect the innocent with unlimited resolve. A species that had unified the galaxy through war now kept it united through peace. And somewhere, perhaps, a little girl who loved to draw spaceships was smiling at what her death had achieved. The galaxy had learned its most important lesson: never harm a human child. The price was too high to pay.